Good morning, welcome to the Clovis Brief. I'm your host, and this is Tuesday, June 9, 2026. Let's check in on our northern Illinois weather. Right now, we're sitting at just under 70 degrees, 69.9 to be exact, but it feels more like 74 with the humidity. Skies are mainly clear, and we've got a light breeze at about 6.5 miles per hour. Today's forecast calls for a high of 83 and a low of 70, with rain moving in. We're expecting about 1/6 of an inch of precipitation. Looking ahead, Wednesday brings thunderstorms with temperatures climbing near 90, and Thursday keeps the stormy pattern going with another half-inch of rain possible. But if you can hold out until Friday, we're looking at beautiful clear weather with a high in the low 70s. Coming up today, we've got quite a show for you. In world news, we're tracking escalating tensions between Israel and Iran following an exchange of missile strikes that's threatening the fragile ceasefire. We'll also dive into primary day coverage, with Maine's Democratic Senate race drawing national attention. On the tech front, Apple has revealed a major new AI architecture built around Google's Gemini models. OpenCV has released version 5 with significant advances for computer vision, and Microsoft's open-source tools have been compromised in a supply chain attack targeting AI developers. We've got a packed security briefing with multiple zero-day vulnerabilities that CISA is ordering federal agencies to patch immediately. And in science, we'll look at NASA's work on the FIFA World Cup and new findings from scanning an interstellar object for alien signals. Let's get started. We begin with breaking developments in the Middle East. The BBC is reporting that an exchange of missile strikes between Israel and Iran over the past 72 hours is threatening the fragile ceasefire that had held for several months. According to PBS NewsHour's coverage, this escalation represents the most serious threat to regional stability since the initial ceasefire was established. The network's analysis suggests this flare-up could actually strengthen Tehran's negotiating position in ongoing diplomatic efforts. President Trump told the BBC that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu did not defy him with the strikes, though the timing has raised questions about coordination with Washington. Adding to Middle East tensions, Reuters is reporting that a United Nations inquiry has found Israeli forces have been actively shielding settlers during attacks on Palestinians in the occupied territories. The UN investigation documented systematic patterns of military protection for settler violence, which could have significant implications for international law and future peace negotiations. In a related development, the Associated Press reports that Trump has confirmed U.S. military pilots are safe after a helicopter crashed near the Strait of Hormuz. The incident, which occurred in one of the world's most strategic waterways, initially raised concerns about potential combat involvement, but officials have characterized it as a mechanical failure. Trump stated the pilots are fine after being rescued from the water. Moving to election news, it's primary day across several states, and NPR is highlighting Maine's Democratic Senate race as the contest drawing the most national attention. The race features Graham Platner, whose campaign has sparked anxiety among establishment Democrats. According to Politico, some Maine Democrats are openly wavering on Platner despite his frontrunner status. The concerns center on past controversial statements and positions that Republicans are expected to weaponize in the general election. NPR notes that Maine's Democratic voters are essentially deciding today whether they're comfortable with the risk Platner represents in what's expected to be a competitive race. The AP adds that primaries in Nevada and South Carolina are also worth watching, particularly gubernatorial contests where Trump-endorsed candidates are testing their strength. In California, NBC News projects that Progressive Council member Nithya Raman has advanced to a November runoff against Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. According to the Associated Press, Raman's advancement represents a significant victory for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party in one of the nation's largest cities. The runoff will be closely watched as a barometer of whether voters in major metropolitan areas are embracing or pulling back from progressive policies on homelessness, policing, and housing. Politico is reporting that Senator Lindsey Graham is spending heavily to ward off an America First primary challenge in South Carolina. The story notes that Graham, once a Trump critic turned ally, is facing pushback from the party's populist wing over his continued support for military engagement, particularly regarding Iran. Graham's willingness to break with Trump on foreign policy has made him vulnerable in a Republican primary, despite his overall alignment with the former president on most issues. Reuters has published a major analysis on American voter behavior, finding that voters are increasingly unlikely to turn their backs on troubled candidates as long as they align with the voters' party. The research shows a significant shift from just a decade ago, when scandals and controversies more frequently derailed campaigns. Now, according to their polling data, partisan loyalty overwhelmingly trumps concerns about individual candidate conduct or past statements. NPR's analysis series has been exploring what it means if political scandals simply matter less in American democracy. Turning to international stories, the BBC reports that 300 migrants bound for the UK were kidnapped and threatened with kidney removal in a horrifying trafficking scheme. British authorities are working with international partners to dismantle the network, which has been operating across multiple countries in North Africa and Europe. The Associated Press is covering the aftermath of a devastating earthquake in the Philippines, where the death toll has reached at least 37, with over 32,000 people displaced. The BBC adds that officials warn the death toll could rise as hundreds of aftershocks continue to jolt the region, hampering rescue efforts in collapsed structures. Reuters reports that Kenya's police have cracked down on protests against a U.S.-funded Ebola quarantine facility being constructed in the country. Tear gas was used to disperse demonstrators who expressed concerns about safety and the facility's proximity to residential areas. This comes as the Associated Press reports that Congo's Ebola outbreak has risen to 100 deaths out of 550 cases, with ongoing conflict in the region significantly slowing the response effort. The AP also shared survivor stories from Congo's 2018 Ebola outbreak, providing crucial lessons for the current crisis. In judicial news, the BBC reports that the International Criminal Court has suspended its top prosecutor after investigating misconduct allegations. The suspension comes at a sensitive time for the court, which is handling several high-profile cases involving war crimes and crimes against humanity. On the technology policy front, NPR reports that a federal judge has struck down the Trump administration's $100,000 fee on new H-1 billion visas. The judge ruled the fee was implemented without proper administrative procedure and caused immediate harm to businesses and workers. The decision is a significant setback for the administration's immigration restrictions targeting high-skilled workers. Pope Leo is preparing for a trip to Spain, according to Reuters and the Associated Press. The pontiff will visit Barcelona's famous Sagrada Familia Basilica while also honoring Catalonia's holy mountain of Montserrat. Reuters notes the tour is focused on addressing themes of war and migration, topics that have defined much of Leo's papacy. And in business news, Bloomberg reports that stocks climbed on Monday as an AI-led rebound entered its second day. The rally comes after several weeks of volatility in tech-heavy indices. China's exports jumped 19.4% in May compared to a year earlier, according to the Associated Press, which cites strong demand for Chinese automobiles and technology goods as driving the surge despite ongoing trade tensions with the United States. Let's turn to news closer to home here in northern Illinois and across the Chicago area. WGN is reporting on a memorial ride held yesterday to honor a Chicago Department of Transportation employee who was killed in a bicycle crash. The ride drew dozens of cyclists and city officials who wanted to pay tribute to the employee and the city he helped shape, according to organizers. The incident has renewed calls for improved bicycle infrastructure and driver awareness in Chicago, particularly around construction zones where CDOT workers are frequently exposed to traffic. In troubling news from the northwest suburbs, WGN reports that an 18-year-old woman was attacked by a bicyclist while walking home in Arlington Heights. Police are seeking surveillance video that might help identify the suspect. The attack occurred in the evening hours, and authorities are asking residents and businesses in the area to check their security cameras. The woman was treated for injuries that were not life-threatening, but the random nature of the attack has put the community on edge. From the western suburbs, WGN is covering a shocking incident at Amazon's Melrose Park facility, where an employee has been charged with murder of a coworker. Police say the incident occurred inside the warehouse during a shift change. The Cook County State's attorney has charged the suspect, but details about what led to the fatal confrontation are still limited. Amazon released a statement saying they're cooperating fully with the investigation and offering support services to employees at the facility. WGN also reports that Evanston Township High School has canceled summer classes due to a ransomware attack. The cyberattack has crippled the school's network systems, making it impossible to safely conduct classes or access student records. District officials are working with cybersecurity experts to assess the damage and restore systems, but there's no timeline yet for when normal operations will resume. This is becoming an increasingly common problem for Illinois school districts, which often lack the resources for robust cybersecurity infrastructure. In weather-related news, WGN meteorologists are noting that temperatures this week are expected to flirt with the year's highest levels yet, with Wednesday potentially hitting near 90 degrees before Thursday's storms cool things down. And WGN has an explainer on Illinois new social media tax, which has generated significant controversy since taking effect last month. The tax applies a small fee to certain social media transactions and advertising revenue generated in the state. Supporters say it's a necessary way to fund digital literacy programs and address the societal costs of social media, while critics argue it's an overreach that could drive tech business out of Illinois. Several lawsuits have already been filed challenging the tax's constitutionality. Now let's dive into the technology and infrastructure landscape, starting with some major news from Apple's developer conference. Hacker News is lighting up with discussion of Apple's revelation of a new AI architecture built around Google's Gemini models. According to MacRumors, Apple has integrated Gemini at a fundamental level in what they're calling Apple Intelligence. This represents a significant strategic shift for a company that has traditionally kept its core technologies in-house. The Hacker News community is particularly focused on the privacy implications and how Apple plans to balance on-device processing with cloud-based Gemini capabilities. The story has generated over 600 points and more than 450 comments. Apple also introduced what they're calling Siri AI, a much more conversational version of their voice assistant. Ars Technica reports that the new Siri can maintain context across multiple exchanges and handle more complex, multi-step requests. The upgrade addresses long-standing complaints that Siri lagged far behind competitors like Alexa and Google Assistant in natural language understanding. Apple's developer documentation for their core AI framework is now available, according to Hacker News, and it's generated over 300 points as developers dig into the technical details. In terms of operating system support, Ars Technica notes that macOS 27 will require Apple Silicon, marking the end of the Intel Mac era for the latest OS version. However, iOS 27 and iPadOS 27 aren't dropping support for any iPhones and only a few older iPad models, showing Apple's continued commitment to longer device support on mobile. Moving to computer vision, Hacker News is featuring OpenCV 5, which the project describes as the biggest leap in years for computer vision. The release, covered at openCV.org, includes major performance improvements, expanded hardware acceleration support, and new deep learning modules. It's attracted over 200 points, and developers are particularly excited about improved real-time processing capabilities and better integration with modern AI frameworks. On the security front, TechCrunch reports that Microsoft's open-source tools were hacked to steal passwords of AI developers. This supply chain attack is particularly concerning because it targeted the development toolchain itself. Hackers compromised several repositories and inserted malicious code designed to exfiltrate credentials when developers built their projects. Microsoft has since cleaned the repositories and is working with affected developers, but the incident highlights the ongoing challenges of securing open-source supply chains. The story has drawn over 160 points and 65 comments on Hacker News, with developers sharing their own close calls and discussing better security practices. Bleeping Computer adds more detail on a related attack, reporting that a new campaign called Shihulud has Trojanized 19 science-focused Pi packages. The malicious packages were designed to look like legitimate scientific computing libraries, and they specifically targeted researchers working in AI and machine learning. The attackers demonstrated sophisticated knowledge of the scientific Python ecosystem, naming their packages to appear as dependencies of popular libraries. Hacker News is also discussing a new project called GitDOT, described as a better GitHub that's open source and written in Rust. The show HN post has generated 263 points and over 230 comments. GitDOT aims to provide a self-hostable alternative to GitHub with a focus on performance and privacy. The project is still early, but the Rust implementation and clean architecture are attracting attention from developers frustrated with GitHub's increasing commercialization and Microsoft's control. In database news, there's excitement about PostgreSQL 19 on the horizon. PG Edge has published an article looking forward to query hints coming in Postgres 19. Query hints have been a long-requested feature that will give developers more control over query planning without resorting to complex workarounds. The feature has generated 165 points on Hacker News, with database administrators sharing scenarios where hints will dramatically improve their ability to optimize performance. For those interested in retro computing, Hacker News is featuring GentleOS, a classic operating system with a lovely retro GUI. The project on GitHub recreates the look and feel of early graphical operating systems with modern code. It's a fun nostalgia trip and an interesting educational resource for understanding how early GUI systems worked. Another retro computing story getting attention is Oldavista, described as the most powerful guide to the old internet. The site at oldavista.com helps users find archived versions of websites and provides a searchable index of the early web. It's accumulated 105 points, and developers are sharing memories of the early internet while also noting how useful it is for research. Someone has been porting the ThinkPad X61 to Coreboot, according to a blog post that's drawn 76 points on Hacker News. The detailed write-up at Blogahimans walks through the process of replacing the proprietary BIOS with the open-source Coreboot firmware. This kind of work keeps older hardware usable and secure, and the ThinkPad X series has a devoted following of users who appreciate the classic keyboard and build quality. Hacker News is also showcasing Performative UI, a React component library of design tropes. The show HN post has earned an impressive 983 points. The library at vorpis.github.io/performativeui intentionally implements common but questionable design patterns, dark patterns, annoying modals, aggressive upsells, as a satirical commentary on modern web design. Developers are both amused and using it as a teaching tool for what not to do. ThyNG is getting attention as a collection of open-source building blocks for computational design and art. The project provides a comprehensive toolkit for creative coding in TypeScript and Clojure script, and it's accumulated 45 points as artists and designers discover its capabilities. In the AI research space, several archive papers are worth highlighting. Researchers have published OmniGame Arena, a unified UFF benchmark for VLM game agents with improvement dynamics, archive 2606.09826. The team created a comprehensive benchmark using Unreal Engine 5 to evaluate vision language model agents in interactive game environments. What makes this interesting is they're not just measuring final performance, but tracking how agents improve over time, the dynamics of learning. This gives researchers much better insight into which architectural choices lead to agents that can actually get better at tasks rather than just being good out of the box. Another paper tackles an agency transferring model-free policy enhancement technique, archive 2606.09825. The authors address one of the big pain points in reinforcement learning, the cost of training policies from scratch. They've developed a technique that allows trained policies to transfer their learned behavior to new agents more efficiently. This could dramatically reduce the computational cost of deploying RL systems at scale. There's also work on rethinking the divergence regularization in LLM-RL, archive 2606.09821. This paper examines a fundamental assumption in how we apply reinforcement learning to large language models. LLM-RL is typically off-policy, meaning the training data doesn't match the current policy's behavior. The researchers question whether common regularization techniques actually help or hurt in this scenario, with implications for how companies fine-tune models like GPT and Claude. On the more theoretical side, a paper on weighted universal approximation of differentiable maps on infinite-dimensional manifolds, archive 2006.0982, extends the universal approximation theorem to functional input neural networks. This is deep mathematical work that establishes theoretical foundations for why certain neural architectures can approximate complex functions, important for understanding the limits and capabilities of AI systems. And researchers are exploring PTL diffusion, manifold-aware diffusion with periodic terminal laws, archive 2006.09816. Standard diffusion models use a single Gaussian distribution as their starting point for generation. This work proposes using more sophisticated periodic terminal distributions that are aware of the underlying manifold structure of the data. The result is better generation quality for complex data types like proteins or molecules where the data has inherent geometric structure. Xiaomi has announced MiMoVit Wo 0.5 Pro Ultra Speed, which they claim is a 1 trillion parameter model capable of generating 1,000 tokens per second. According to their blog post that's drawn 576 points on Hacker News, this would make it one of the fastest inference systems for a model of that size. The community is skeptical but intrigued. If the claims hold up, it represents significant progress in making huge models practical for real-time applications. On Lobsters, there's discussion of a piece called Cleaning Up After AI Rockstar Developers, which uses the vibe coding tag. The article at codingwithjess.com discusses the technical debt left behind by developers who rapidly prototype using AI code generation without proper architecture or documentation. It struck a nerve with 37 points and developers sharing their own experiences inheriting AI-generated code bases. Speaking of which, there's actually a meta-discussion on Lobsters questioning whether we should keep tagging everything as vibe coding. The thread has 143 points, with users debating whether the term has become overused and whether it actually captures something meaningful or has just become a pejorative for any rapid development style people don't like. There's also a piece titled, I Wish Deno Would Keep Doing What It Does Best, reflecting some community concern about Deno's direction as it adds more features and complexity. The article at HackersPub has 29 points and echoes broader debates in the JavaScript ecosystem about whether tools should remain focused or expand their scope. And someone has written about what I got wrong about fast terminals, a technical deep dive into terminal performance that's earned 31 points on Lobsters. The author revisits their previous assumptions about what makes terminals fast and shares surprising findings from benchmarking and profiling work. GitHub Trending is showing several interesting projects, though many are sponsorship pages rather than code repositories. One that stands out is Personal AI Infrastructure from Daniel Miessler, which is getting significant attention. The project provides templates and guides for setting up your own AI infrastructure, from running local models to integrating various AI services. On Ars Technica, there's coverage of the FCC lifting a looming deadline for Amazon's LEO satellite broadband constellation. Amazon had been facing a deadline to launch a certain percentage of its satellites or risk losing its spectrum allocation. The extension gives Amazon more time to deploy its Starlink competitor, though the company is still significantly behind SpaceX in the satellite internet race. In more concerning news, Ars Technica reports that tests suggest Russian satellites can jam GPS on a continental scale. Security researchers conducted experiments that demonstrated Russian electronic warfare satellites have the capability to disrupt GPS signals across vast geographic areas, not just localized regions. This has significant implications for both military operations and civilian infrastructure that depends on GPS for navigation and timing. Let's move into our security briefing with updates from CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog and other security news. CISA has added several critical vulnerabilities that are being actively exploited. Let's walk through them. First, CV-2026-50751, added on June 8th with a due date of June 11th. That's just 3 days for federal agencies to patch. This is a checkpoint security gateway vulnerability involving improper authentication and IK-Evone key exchange. According to Bleeping Computer, this vulnerability could allow unauthenticated remote attackers to compromise the gateway, and it's already been exploited by ransomware gangs. CISA is giving federal agencies just 3 days to patch this because of the active exploitation. This affects Check Point's VPN infrastructure, which is widely deployed in enterprise environments. Next is CV-MNS 2000 and 26-42271, also added June 8th with a due date of June 22nd. This affects Berry AI Lite LLM and involves a command injection vulnerability. Any authenticated user, including those with low-privilege internal user accounts, can exploit this to execute arbitrary commands. Given the increasing use of Lite LLM for managing AI model APIs, this is particularly concerning for organizations running AI infrastructure. We've also got CV-MNS 2000 and 26-28318, added June 5th with a due date of June 19th. This is a SolarWinds SerView vulnerability involving uncontrolled resource consumption. The flaw allows specially crafted post requests using the content encoding header to crash or overwhelm the service. SerView is widely used for managed file transfer, so this could disrupt critical business operations. CV-MNS 2000 and 26-45247 was added June 3rd with a due date of June 6th. That deadline has already passed, so affected agencies should have already patched. This vulnerability affects Murisvit full-page cache warmer and involves deserialization of untrusted data. Unauthenticated attackers can achieve remote code execution, which is about as bad as it gets. Going back a bit further, CV-MNS 2000 and 22-492 was added June 2nd with a due date of June 5th. This is a Linux kernel vulnerability involving improper authentication that allows privilege escalation via the cgroup's Vone release agent feature. This is an older vulnerability from 2022 that's now seeing active exploitation, probably as attackers work through unpatched systems. CV-MNS 2000 and 25-48595, also added June 2nd with a due date of June 5th, affects Android framework. It's an integer overflow vulnerability allowing code execution that could lead to local privilege escalation. Android users should ensure their devices are updated. CV-MNS 2000 and 24-21182 was added June 1st with a due date of June 4th. This affects Oracle WebLogic Server and allows unauthenticated attackers with network access via T3 or IIOP protocols to compromise the server. WebLogic is common in enterprise Java environments, so this one has broad impact. CV-MNS 2000 and 26-257, added May 29th with a due date of June 1st, is a Palo Alto Networks PAN-OS authentication bypass vulnerability. Attackers can bypass security restrictions and establish unauthorized connections. This affects firewall infrastructure, which is obviously critical, and we have two from late May. CV-MNS 2000 and 26-48027 and CV-MNS 2000 and 26-45321. The first affects NX console and involves embedded malicious code. A compromised version of the extension was actually published. The second affects TanStack and allowed malicious versions to be published to NPM that could steal credentials. Both of these are supply chain attacks hitting developer tools, which is a growing attack vector. Moving to other security news, Bleeping Computer reports that Google has patched a new Chrome zero-day flaw being exploited in the wild. This is the 5th Chrome zero-day bug exploited in attacks this year, highlighting the ongoing targeting of web browsers. Users should ensure Chrome is updated to the latest version. Bleeping Computer also covers NFC share and Android malware spreading via fake banking app updates hosted on GitHub. The malware is distributed through repositories made to look like legitimate banking app updates, then uses NFC capabilities to steal payment information. The campaign demonstrates how attackers are abusing GitHub's trusted platform status. GOGS, the self-hosted Git service, has patched a critical zero-day enabling remote code execution, according to Bleeping Computer. Anyone running GOGS should update immediately, as this allows complete compromise of the server. Meta has confirmed new developments in its ongoing battle with NSO Group. According to both Ars Technica and Bleeping Computer, WhatsApp says it disrupted new NSO spyware phishing attacks. Meta is alleging that NSO violated the terms of a previous injunction with these new attacks on WhatsApp users. The attacks used sophisticated social engineering to trick targets into clicking malicious links that would install Pegasus spyware. SoFi has confirmed a third-party data breach at its Hong Kong subsidiary, Bleeping Computer reports. While the main U.S. operations weren't affected, customer data from the Hong Kong entity was exposed through a vendor compromise. Apple announced a new feature that automatically changes compromised passwords, according to Bleeping Computer. The feature, part of the Apple Intelligence rollout, monitors for credential leaks and can automatically update passwords for supported services without user intervention. It's an interesting approach to addressing the password reuse problem. Palo Alto's Unit 42 has published research on Microsoft Teams phishing attacks with the title "When Hi, This Is IT" comes through Microsoft Teams. The report details how attackers are exploiting Teams' default settings to send phishing messages that appear to come from legitimate IT support. The attacks have been particularly effective because Teams messages feel more trusted than email, and many users don't realize external users can message them. SANS Internet Storm Center is tracking the TeamPCP supply chain campaign with activity continuing through June 7th. This ongoing campaign has compromised multiple software development supply chains to distribute malware, and Bruce Schneier's blog has two relevant posts. One discusses a critical Zcash vulnerability that was found and fixed. The vulnerability could have allowed attackers to create unlimited Zcash tokens without detection, which would have destroyed the cryptocurrency's value. The fact that it was caught and patched before exploitation is good news, but highlights the challenges of implementing privacy-preserving cryptocurrency systems correctly. Schneier also posted an update on Anthropic's Project Glasswing, though specific details are limited in the summary. This is Anthropic's effort to make their Claude models more interpretable by understanding what's happening inside the neural networks. Let's turn our attention skyward for science and space news. NASA is highlighting an interesting connection between their work and the 2026 FIFA World Cup. According to their article, NASA science and Artemis program technologies are actually shaping aspects of the World Cup, which is being hosted across North America this month. The piece details how NASA's work on lightweight materials, thermal management systems developed for spacesuits, and even data visualization techniques originally created for mission control are being applied to improve everything from stadium cooling systems to player performance monitoring. It's a great example of how space program innovations find their way into everyday applications. The Artemis II crew has earned a spiffy new patch, NASA reports. The article titled "The Fastest Humans in the Galaxy Just Got a Spiffy Patch to Prove It" notes that the crew has officially received mission patches commemorating their upcoming flight. The Artemis II astronauts will be traveling at speeds that make them literally the fastest humans, and the Mach 39 emblem on their patch reflects that incredible velocity. NASA's Earth Observatory has published imagery and analysis on digging back in time in the UAE. The piece explores archaeological sites in the United Arab Emirates using satellite imagery that reveals ancient settlements and structures beneath the desert sands. Remote sensing technology allows archaeologists to identify promising excavation sites without extensive ground surveys, and the UAE's arid environment preserves ancient features that would have eroded in wetter climates. NASA is also reporting progress on the INCUS satellites toward launch. INCUS, which stands for Investigation of Convective Updrafts, is a mission designed to study storm systems and precipitation. The satellites will work together to create three-dimensional maps of storm clouds, helping improve weather prediction and our understanding of how storms develop and intensify. From San Francisco, NASA has shared a metropolitan mosaic image of the city captured from the International Space Station. The photo shows the distinctive geography of the Bay Area with the Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco Bay, and the surrounding urban development clearly visible from orbit. And there's a fun image gallery titled simply Supersonic, showcasing various supersonic aircraft and research throughout NASA's history, from the X-1 that first broke the sound barrier to modern experimental vehicles. Futurism is reporting on the results after scientists scanned interstellar object 3I/Atlas for alien signals. The object, which passed through our solar system, was examined using sensitive radio telescopes looking for any narrowband signals that might indicate artificial origin. While no alien signals were detected, the survey represents an important data point in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Every interstellar object that passes through our neighborhood offers a unique opportunity to search for technologies we can't yet imagine. In more concerning science-adjacent news, Futurism reports that zoo officials are horrified by an AI data center that's menacing their endangered animals. A data center built near a zoo is apparently creating environmental conditions, heat, noise, or electromagnetic interference that are disturbing sensitive species. The juxtaposition of cutting-edge AI infrastructure with wildlife conservation is an unexpected conflict in our increasingly technology-dense world. Let's wrap up with a quick look at the markets, and then I'll send you on your way. Bloomberg reports that stocks climbed Monday as an AI-led rebound entered its second day. Technology shares recovered some of their recent losses, with investors seeing value after the sell-off. The rally was broad-based across major indices, with the Nasdaq leading gains. Meanwhile, China's export data showing nearly 20% growth in May has added to optimism about global economic activity, even as trade tensions persist. U.S. small business optimism, however, fell to its lowest level since October 2024, according to Bloomberg, suggesting Main Street remains more cautious than Wall Street about economic conditions. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Clovis Brief. Thanks for spending your morning with me. Tomorrow we'll be tracking the aftermath of today's primaries, following up on those Middle East developments, and diving into whatever surprises the tech world throws at us overnight. Until then, stay curious, stay secure, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.